Disclaimer: Jammu Kashmir TV is a voice of voiceless, believing in complete freedom of expression, however, making it clear that ASBI Institute are not responsible for conversation or words used in any of the shows.
Welcome to another episode of Diaspora Voices. Here we talk to members of the Kashmiri community who have settled away from Azad Kashmir in places such as the West, including England and Scotland and other parts of Britain. Today it is my pleasure to welcome a fellow academic, Dr. Yasmin Farooq. Welcome to Diaspora Voices, Dr. Saab.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karamat. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me your time so we can learn about you and learn from you.
Thank you.
Let us start at the beginning. Tell us about your life in Kashmir.
Okay. I came to the UK in the late 70s to join my father alongside with my family. Before that, I was studying. I had just completed what we called at the time FSE, which stands for Faculty of Medicine. So I was planning to go into medicine. And just at that point in time, my whole family decided to move to the UK. So I also had to come with them.
Just take us, give us a glimpse of life in Kashmir. Where was your family from? Their background, your own childhood and early education.
Yeah. My family originates from the Indian administered Kashmir. So the grandparents and parents migrated in 1947. Some of the family settled in Mirpur, Azad Kashmir, my father's side, and my mother's side, they settled in Jhelum. So I was growing up in between two cities, in fact. My both parents were teachers, and from time to time they get posted from one village to another. But in the early 60s, my father decided to come to the UK because at that time, as you would also remember, that vouchers were being distributed, and there was an incentive for people to go abroad. So my father decided to come to the UK, and we carried on living in Mirpur by that time. I did my primary education in a village in Punjab, not far from Mirpur, and then we moved back to Mirpur, and I completed the rest of my education in Mirpur city. Okay. So I went to a college. At that time, we used to have a co-education college, and I think we were the last batch actually who were studying in a co-education college, because I was doing science subjects. I think they'd always had a college for women separately, but they didn't do science subjects. So I was, for that reason, in a co-education college. But as soon as our batch finished, they then introduced the science into the women's college as well.
I have been trying to learn about education in the Mirpur area, both pre-partition, pre-1947, and also post-1947. And my impression has been that there were, first of all, not many opportunities for education. There weren't that many schools, but certainly opportunities for women, girls, were very limited. Would you say your experience, your upbringing, the educational opportunities you had was an unusual thing?
Yes, I think there is lots of variants that play their role. So, for example, my parents, my mother came from Rajouri city, so she had already had exposure to much wider opportunities than my father. My father was in a village in Rajouri, and he always used to tell us stories that how his father used to take him every morning alongside another friend of his to a school which was many miles away. And he would tell us stories that one day he actually saw a lion on the way, and also how he used to read books in the street light. It was a very primitive village, whereas my mother's because she came from an urban area, had been exposed to much wider opportunities. So I think as as I started my schooling, I felt that I was in a privileged position because both my parents had exposure to education opportunities, and they placed a very high importance on education. So my mother's side, my maternal grandfather, father, he placed a lot of emphasis on female children education. So my mother's, they were six sisters, and my grandfather made sure that they all went to school and at least completed their primary education.
Mm. Mm.
So I think that these things played a significant role in how I navigated my education system in Pakistan and Kashmir.
Yes, and obviously that is from the family's uh, perspective, family's attitude to education, but it would appear that you also had the opportunities because there were many villages, many parts of Kashmir, many parts of Mirpur, where even though the parents may want their children to be educated, there were not the opportunities, there were not the
Abs-
schools. Uh,
Absolutely, but
you obviously were lucky, and to have the opportunity.
yeah, we always lived in the city in Mirpur, so there was opportunities, but oftentimes I think there were other reasons that played a role in terms of girls' education. For
Mm,
example, sometimes they were the sole carers within the family, sometimes financial. So there was lots of other things happening, and yeah, I do feel privileged to have been able to go to school.
yes, and the education was, what was the main language? Was it in Urdu, English, Pahari? Uh, what did you learn in your schooling, in your primary, secondary? You went as far as FSC, which is uh, be higher education, I believe.
It was at that time, yeah. My primary education was in Urdu,
Mm,
and we were actually never encouraged to speak Pahari in school because my primary education schooling was in a Punjab village,
mm,
and also I think at that time and even to now to some extent I find that the Pahari in the public spaces was something that people shied away, and you would try and converse in a language which was common. So we were encouraged to speak a kind of mixture really, because parents spoke Pahari, which was from the Indian administered Kashmir.
mm,
So it was slightly different even from within Mirpur. And growing up in a Punjab village, they had their own particular dialect. So I don't think people spoke much about Pahari, Mirpuri, Punjabi. We just you just spoke a language that a common language that was used, and you were just expected to get on.
mm, mm. You said in public spaces that that would give me the impression that there was relegation of your mother tongue to the private space, that there was maybe a certain stigma to speaking it in public spaces. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes, I mean later on in my life, I went to Jhelum College because I think initially my father resisted for me to go to a co-education college in Mirpur, and since my mother came from Jhelum and I still had my Nanial family there, so my father said, why don't you go to Jhelum College, which I did, and yeah, I did experience a lot of prejudice, and in fact. There were very few people that I would confide in that, oh, actually, I'm from Mirpur, because I think it was something that was looked down. And so I from a very early age, I learned that, you had to become something else to navigate your spaces, public spaces.
Okay. So not just speaking Pahari, but coming from Mirpur itself had a
Yes.
stigma.
Absolutely, yes. The geographical location where you came from, where your roots were, and even it is such a complex area. Even living in Mirpur, one would say that was your home, town or country. So people always draw distinctions, and they would say, "Oh, you are a Mahajar and we are Basniq." So, Mahajar is, obviously people who came from the other side of the Kashmir. So in Jhelum, it was even more pronounced, of course, that
Okay.
you were Pahari log, and
Yes.
in social hierarchy, you were a lot lower than the old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And have things changed back in Kashmir about such matters?
I think I mean, I do go from time to time, and I think at the time when I left, I think there used to be a lot of emphasis on which caste you are from and what sort of are you local or are you Mahajar, but I think these things have I would say probably not died down, but I think people do seem to get on with each other, and what used to be significant in that era, I don't think it is that significant anymore. I do pick that up.
Okay. Thank you. So your father came as part of the wave of post-war migration. You said he came in the 60s
Yes, early 60s.
with a voucher which would tell me that it was post 1962 Commonwealth Immigration Act, which instigated
Yeah.
the voucher system. And do you know what type of voucher he came on? Was it a I think there were three different types or different categories of vouchers. Do you have any understanding what voucher he had and what he came here to do?
Okay, well, I've learned something new from you today. I I thought there was only one form of vouchers. All I know is that he answered his call to come here and work in the British steel industry,
Okay.
and that's all I know really.
Yes. There were three vouchers, I believe. One was for professionals. One was for manual workers, laborers, and I think there was also one which was for specific jobs.
Okay, well,
And
I think his would have been low skilled, unskilled
yes,
voucher.
yes. Um, And then he came here and settled, and you joined him in the 70s, I believe.
Late 70s.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Talk me through those early days. You were by this time an adult who'd lived your whole life in Kashmir. You were now coming to a what would be a foreign space.
Yeah.
Just talk me through those early days. How what did you see? What did you find here? How you settled down?
Yeah. I must say that we were very excited to come here to the UK. In fact, my mother had to fight really hard with my father because so in the first instance he came as as a single man, which people did at the time, and then we were at the time five sisters and one brother, and also it was quite common at that time to send for male children. So my father decided to have my brother here, but at that time when he was deciding, before unaccompanied male children used to come, it was quite common for them to come and join their fathers. But and the law changed, and they then had to be accompanied by their mothers. So so my mother had to come with him, and so she lived here, and another baby brother was born here, and then my father, of course, wanted her to go back, so that we were left with our grandfather, and my mother said that she would go on one condition: if he sends for us as well, because she really liked being here, and the freedom it gave her, and the opportunities it gave her as a female. So my father said okay. So she had to do a lot of persuasion. He eventually she was able to. So she then goes back, and then by the time I just finished my FSc, and I did get a place in a medical college in Multan, but I think my father said it's he in some way he was very liberal in many ways, but he was also very conventional. He didn't feel that it was a wise thing to leave a young daughter there. I don't know how many miles it is from Mirpur to Multan. So the whole family came. As we came, a mixture of feelings, leaving close friends behind. You don't know whether you're going to be able to see them again. And some older relatives who were my father's aunties. And I still to this day remember one of his auntie. She treated us like her own grandchildren, and she was crying so much, and we didn't know why she was crying so much. And so we came here, and in Sheffield Steel City, all we saw was just very dark black buildings, smokes. And so we thought, where is this paradise? that we thought we were coming to a paradise.
Yes.
And it was very different. Today's Sheffield is very different from the late 70s. Like I said, there was a lot of fog those days, smoke coming from big chimneys, and so I wanted to continue studying, and my younger brothers and sisters were able to, because they were under 18, and they went into language schools, and I was by that time 20, and I couldn't access any of the free opportunities.
Yes.
So I didn't, but my father said, it doesn't matter, he will pay the fees. So I went into a further education college, and I did my proficiency exam in English and whatever I needed to do, and I enrolled for A levels because they wouldn't accept my qualifications, and they said, you have to get into a medical college, you have to do your A levels again. So that's what I had to do, and I think the feeling of uprootedness, I would say, stayed there for a very long time. In my family, extended family here, I noticed that sometimes people would laugh how I would speak. I mean, I did speak English because obviously, in FSE in Pakistan, you have English as a compulsory subject, and but of course I spoke more like Shakespeare's English, not Yorkshire English. And I do remember once there was a minor car accident outside our house, and I came out like other people did, and I was asking them, were there any casualties? So that's how I spoke, rather than, well, did anybody get injured or, I did have enough command of English to get by. And like I said, I think I felt that, so it kind of put me off from speaking English within the extended family because, I didn't, of course, have the same accent. I didn't have the same fluency. And it knocked off my confidence a little.
Yes. And what was Sheffield like in those days? Was it a welcoming place for immigrants coming from Kashmir?
Mixed, I would say. There were some neighbors who I felt that they were welcoming, and some older ladies, white British English ladies. They would try and involve us, and vice versa. But at the same time, if you went out and asked some people, how I want to go from A to B, could you please tell me how to get there? And I remember once asking somebody, and they said, "Oh yeah, there is a colored family lives there," and the colored word was used quite often, and I didn't know what it meant. All I felt that it was, they were referring to Asian families. Also, I think my father would tell us stories. I think there was an incident around that time where a Pakistani man, he was trying to perform wudu, and he was washing his feet apparently in the sink, because he didn't know that he wasn't supposed to. And then an Englishman was watching him, and I think there was a fight, and so much so that the Pakistani man was actually murdered just for that reason. So that we found that very, very worrying, and it sent a shockwave. Also, time to time, we had our milk delivered. I think everybody around that time did. We had milk deliveries. And if ever the milk bottle had been tampered, my father says, "No, don't just throw it away." And we did not understand why. And he would say, "You don't know, somebody could put poison in it." And again, that was very scary. So I would say that I think these fears, they did exist, and they were based on facts, and there was that fear.
Yes. So you clearly arrived as an educated person, but you knew different types of English, and I first met you by which time you were a doctor, and so just it's an interesting story. Just give me a kind of glimpse of that journey from when you first arrived in England, and you had to go to college to do your A levels because your qualifications were not acceptable, and now you're a doctor. That's a very interesting journey.
Thank you. So after I completed my A levels, I did try to get into medicine, but of course my grades were not high enough. I mean, there was a very tough competition here. There was a tough competition even back in Kashmir at that time, for you to get into a medical college. But I had managed to get a place there, but here my grades were not good enough. So then I thought, what am I going to do? So I then looked around and I explored if I could go into a teaching degree, and a few other qualifications I explored. But I think the stumbling block was that the grades that these courses were asking, I hadn't done well enough, because like I said, although I could speak English, but I think here things were still sort of tough. And so eventually I got into social services. They were looking for somebody. I don't know if you remember Section 11 jobs.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think in the early 80s, those were the only kind of jobs that our people could get into. So there was either factory jobs, or in terms of service area, service sector, this was the only provision we had. So I was lucky enough to be appointed. They used to call it welfare assistant. And so I was the first, you can say, Asian and Black worker to be appointed in Sheffield Social Services Department.
Okay.
And from there on, after 1 year, I became a social work assistant, and then I was wanting to pursue education. I didn't want to, spend the rest of my life being a welfare assistant or a social work assistant.
Yeah.
Again, my father also wanted me to continue education alongside. So I was again lucky to access that particular year, I think in 1989, because there weren't many social workers from our background coming forward. So they made a specific provision that that particular year they were only going to recruit a Black and minority background social work assistants to go on to social work training. So I was lucky enough to get onto that course. Once I completed, it was called Certificate in Social Work Education Qualification, and it was equivalent to a degree level. So it actually inspired me to do further, because by that time, by now, I had got a degree qualification, and I could branch out to wherever I wanted to. It was also equally important for me to work as well, because by that time I had just got married, and I had to support my husband, because he was back where I started my journey, and it took him a while to get settled. So so I went back to social work, because once you complete training, you were meant to go back, give 2 years work back to them, because they had paid for your education, etc. Alongside, I was doing masters in social policy. Once I finished my master's, and so I progressed in social services from one job to another, eventually becoming a team manager. And then I went into social work education. So I became a social work lecturer. When I went to this job, they said to me, we can offer you, I think what is called a postgraduate certificate in education. You can, I think it's PGC, but in for higher education anyway. And I thought, well, if I don't have to pay, yeah, of course. So alongside that, I completed my certificate in higher education. Once I finished that, my job had come to an end, because it was a fixed contract in a lecturership. So they said to me, you can either reapply, or we can offer you a nice pension package. I just turned 50. So I decided to take early retirement. And
Yes.
just as I was leaving university, an email came from Manchester University asking for they were recruiting for studentship, PhD.
Hmm.
And so I thought, well, that's a golden opportunity for me. But I said to
Yeah.
myself, I'm 50 now.
Hmm.
I'm also female.
Hmm.
And this is studentship because it's of course it's a scholarship, and they are going to be inundated with lots of applications. Who is going to be wanting to appoint me?
Hmm.
So I said, well, okay, I've got nothing to lose. I will apply. I applied, and I think they received about 200 applications.
Okay.
Once again, I happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
So I got this studentship, and they also put a requirement that although I've already got masters, but I haven't got masters in social sciences, so I would have to do masters in social sciences, but they would pay for me.
Okay.
So I said that's fine. So that's how I ended up from my journey from A levels,
Yes.
progressed onto various educational qualifications, and eventually PhD.
Yes. 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 Thank you for that. And then you did your PhD with a focus on researching what I would call the pioneers in our community, professional pioneers who entered the health services, the doctors, Asian doctors, was your research. Just tell us something about your research.
Okay. So the context of my research was that, as you would remember, that back in 2001, there was race riots in three of the northern cities of Britain: Burnley, Bradford, and what else? Anyway, three cities.
Yes.
And so there was the government invested a lot of money in research, in terms of finding out why these race riots occurred. And as you would know from your education background, that when you apply for funding, you have to use certain buzzwords, i.e., community cohesion. And this project had been initiated by a professor, well-known international level Professor Anis Ismail, who was a GP himself. And he was very interested in exploring the experiences of South Asian doctors who had migrated from the Indian subcontinent, i.e., Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So through the community cohesion umbrella, if you like, they were able to secure some funding. And so that's where my journey started. In fact, I have always been interested in the identities exploration, and it was like, dream come true. It was a project that I would have loved to be involved. So the reason my department was interested was that I think we know so much about the experiences of low and semi-skilled migrants, as you would know. We know how they are doing in education, employment, health, housing. There's wealth of knowledge, but there was a dearth of knowledge in terms of highly skilled migrants, especially these doctors. So one of the big reason also was that South Asian doctors from the early 60s, or in fact from the days when NHS was conceived, they are the second largest group in the UK after the UK trained doctors. So there was another reason for us to know what their experiences were like. So I chose for my research general practitioners, and the reason was that I wanted to know how they actually settled in the communities that they settled in. And so that's where my research journey started. And I
Yes.
can't remember what your question was.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think the focus was Asian doctors, South Asian doctors, but within that category, were there particular numbers of Pakistani doctors or even Kashmiri doctors?
Yes, yeah. So I interviewed, I believe there was 28 doctors, GPs in total. So I chose 3 case study areas because since there was no previous research, you can't draw comparisons. So for that reason, I chose 3 case study areas. Also, I was interested in, what role the context plays in terms of, identities. So I chose Barnsley, Sheffield, and Manchester. So it was a mixture of, urban area, large urban area, and rural ex-coal mining town. And yes, there were originally the plan was to include doctors from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India and Pakistan. But as you know, that PhD is a very time limited project, and I was having access issues for Bangladeshi and the Sri Lankan doctors. So predominantly in my research, the GPs were from Pakistan and India, and within Pakistan quota, I did have a couple of doctors who originated from Mirpur, Kashmir.
Okay. Yeah. So they were pioneers in their own right. They were the outliers in their communities. Somehow had come from probably similar backgrounds as yourself, and certainly were outliers here because majority of the community here from our community, majority of the migrants were manual workers, and it. I'm interested in the fact that your starting point was community cohesion. Some of these doctors, I imagine, were what I'd call bridge builders, or they were a bridge themselves between the minority communities and the majority community. Because I imagine in some villages, some towns, some areas, they were probably the first black or brown person.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a fascinating story, a story that hasn't been told before, and so I did 2 types of analysis. So I conducted a quantitative analysis in which I looked at the GP workforce data for about 2 decades. Accessing data from the NHS was a story on its own. They're very, very difficult people to release the data for the right reasons. So I was able to look at the data in these 3 different cities and also the global picture. And what that showed to me was that, of course, there was structural inequality in terms of where these doctors were located, in terms of their employment mobility. So the picture emerged and the patterns emerged, which was that they were mostly appointed in inner city deprived areas, ex-coal mining cities, and places which were considered as least desired by the UK trained doctors. So that was the quantitative analysis. So I then undertook qualitative in-depth interviews with these GPs, 28 GPs. And so, I was able to ask them to speak about these patterns, what was their understanding? Why did that happen? So I throughout my research, I was interested in drawing comparisons in terms of their experiences and also what we already know about lay members of the South Asian community. So, for example, I was interested in the context of their migration. And here the difference was that, for example, people like me and you, we were part of a chain migration, vouchers, whereas in their experience, all the doctors said that they came to gain postgraduate medical qualification. They weren't economic migrants. They only came to come here to gain this post-medical qualification so that they could go back and practice as consultants. So that was their context, and also their networks were professional networks like GMC and other bodies. It was interesting that part of PhD, as you know, we do literature review, and it was fascinating to learn that and the medical colleges in our countries in the Indian subcontinent are actually or were built on the mirror model of the British medical colleges. So they are regulated by the British, and So when they came, they were very familiar with the system. They spoke the language. However, they spoke English like myself,
Yes.
and there is a lot of literature around. There came a time when concerns were being expressed about the proficiency in English. So all these historical developments. So from there on, I was interested in what at the point of entry when they came to the UK, what was their experiences, and again there was a sharp contrast, if you like. And I give you one example that one doctor said to me that when he came to the UK, a hospital had actually sent a driver and a car to fetch him from the airport, and they gave him accommodation, etc. And and he said, I wrote a letter to my wife the same day, and I said, I am in real heaven, because he was really looked after. And remember that this was a time when people from the lay South Asian community, when they were arriving, and there was one incident which has been well documented, that an Asian woman, where she was subjected to virginity test because there was a question about whether she is the real fiancée of the person who had sent for. So on one hand, people like us who are from the lay members of the South Asian community, some of us were being subjected to that kind of a harsh experience, whereas these doctors, they were treated as elite.
Yes.
So from there on, I looked at how they navigated the system within the NHS, and I've talked about glass ceiling and how they then entered into the general practice. There again, this was a fascinating story because, again, you would know that there's a lot of literature on entrepreneurship in, South Asian community, and because people were not able to find jobs in service sector or factories, and they ended up in, having taxis and takeaways and restaurants and shops. There was actually a similar experience for doctors as well, because they couldn't penetrate through to the system within the NHS. And again, I have talked in detail about their experiences in my research. In terms of their social mobility, employment mobility. So they did something very similar. They kind of jumped off the ship within the NHS and entered into the general practice, which is a kind of self-employment within the NHS. So so I think there is a parallel there. Then I looked at their integration and sense of belonging experiences within three different contexts, three different case study areas that I had chosen. And I also looked at, I assigned a whole chapter on in how they experience racism and what were their coping strategies.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is, in a nutshell, this is what I explored.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And since doing your PhD, what have you been doing? What are you doing at the moment?
I think you can call me as a retired academic now, but also you would agree with me that academics don't never retire.
Yes.
So I am officially retired, but I do from time to time do take part in academic activities. Not long ago, I went into I attended. You will have heard about it as well. It was in Birmingham Literature Festival.
Yes.
And so I found that very, very interesting, and to meet people from different walks of life, and also recently I attended a conference. Title of it was narrative therapy, because my background is in social work, and I still do get involved in things which have that kind of a background. So I pick and choose. I still do time to time academic writing, and so of course I have also published my book, which is based on my PhD research, and I've written a few book chapters, and I'm one of those people who can't rest. I continue. I think education is not just about gaining certificates. I feel that I think every day you learn something from somebody. So I network all the times with people and intellectual sort of opportunities where I feel that I sort of it will enhance my intellectual ability.
Yes. Yes. I mean, you will know that what is statistically described as the Pakistani community is a large community, but within a majority of them are majority of Pakistanis are from Azad Kashmir, and it's a large community. It's a diverse community, and what is your own assessment of our Kashmiri diaspora community, where we've come from, where we've been, where we're going next in this UK context?
Okay, I think I have always had raised awareness of my identity, because my parents came from the other side of Kashmir, and like I said, that when we were in Mirpur and other places, we were kind of treated as the other. So those experiences have given me a heightened awareness of who I am, and where do I belong. So when I came here in the UK, I feel that I kind of immersed myself in education, and I didn't pay too much attention to my Kashmiri identity. Although in my social work experience or social work role, of course, I would come across families who were from Mirpuri or background or Kashmiri background. And one of the difficulty we used to have was, and again, I think you would remember from your days, was the translation unit. And so I worked as a fostering and adoption officer for 7 years, and whenever we did a specific recruitment drive, we would, translate leaflets so that we could recruit from within the Asian community. And I was sort of coming across barriers. We did have a translation unit, but the literature was translated in Urdu, and sometimes not. Sometimes the words were not even translated in Urdu. They were so. For example, Down syndrome, or if the child had a specific learning disability, either the interpreter or translator didn't find the word or didn't feel appropriate. They would just use the Urdu alphabets, but they would say the child has a muscular dystrophy, or these words were not translated. So I became aware that people are continuously being disadvantaged because they can't read and write Urdu, and these things were very much real lived experiences of people, and I feel that the awareness has grown. I feel people have become more aware of their identity. Not long ago, there was a campaign again when we had the census statistics, and as you would remember, there was a campaign, and I came across criticism from people from our own community that I didn't expect them to. They said, why are you creating divisions? We are Pakistanis, we're one people.
Yes.
And my argument was that it's not about the bigger picture. We need to understand the real difficulties people are having. If they so much money is being spent on translation, and these are people have life-threatening conditions, issues when they go to hospitals and interpreters, and people's needs need to be matched with the policy recommendations. So it is of vital importance that we give voice to people's identity voices. And I think oftentimes my experience is that people don't either it's ignorance or veiled ignorance. They don't want to know. But I think within our communities these real issues that yes, I think we are a minority in a minority and have been oppressed. So we have layers after layers, and I think it's our duty as academics to continue raising awareness within our community that you have to give specific examples to people sometimes who will not understand or don't want to understand that. Look, this is why it is so important that we have we have our voices heard.
Yes. Thank you. I've been researching our community, and I think last time I learned that somebody in our community came in 1917. So previously it was 1924, which was exactly 100 years. And now it's 107 years. And I know there are people who came here from before that. Clearly, the UK has been our community's home for many years. And this is the place where our communities have settled. You've been here nearly 50 years. You are educated person, professional with a PhD. What advice would you offer to our community, to parents, to the young people?
My advice is, I think we should tap into whatever opportunities there are around. Even if it's a small opportunity. Education, I think, is so important. Young people, women, older people, and again, education is not just about getting official certificates or degrees. I think whatever opportunities, lifelong learning opportunities you have around you, tap into them, access them. And for example, we have so many health problems within our communities. And yes, on one level, we can say that there's an element of racism, and our needs are not being met, etc. But as a community, I think we also have to take on responsibility ourselves,
Yes.
and educate ourselves, rather than blaming on other factors which sometimes are beyond our capacity.
Yes. Yes.
But whatever is in our own capacity, I think we, like I said, we should tap into whatever opportunities there are around to educate ourselves, to raise our own awareness.
Yes. 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 Thank you for that. As I said at the start, this has been an opportunity to learn about you and learn from you, and I will continue that learning journey. We will continue to work together. As you said, we academics never retire, and actually, in my view, we should not retire fully, because we have knowledge and wisdom. You have life experience, and a highly educated person. You have much to give, and I will go on learning about you, and we will continue to work together. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning, to share your life's journey and your professional journey for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karamat. It's been a privilege to talk to you and to talk to your audience. Thank you.